Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reginal Drummer, and welcome to another episode of We Are Ready, where we focus on putting things in place so that we will be prepared for almost any situation, whether it's a man-made situation or uh, a natural disaster or something in your community or in your family. And if we prepare ourselves to stay ready, we don't have to get ready and become examples of those that were not prepared. So we will always focus on different areas in our personal lives, in our communities, and uh, just our families and ourselves so that we are prepared for the situation at hand. Because if you're not ready, nobody's going to come and take over for you. And if they did, they would have a totally different agenda that would be not be in your best. So you got to stay ready at all times. Uh, we encourage you to like, share, join, and subscribe over here on our Square Mile Media Atlanta channel over here on YouTube. Definitely call a friend and share a friend. If you got any questions or comments, share them in the chat area tonight. We got a special show that we're going to be coming up and bringing to you this evening. We're going to be talking about building healthy relationships. But before I get into that, there are a couple key things that we always like to share. Over the next 100 days, and if you started January 1st with us, you knew that we completed 100 days prior to 2022. But we put a couple things together so that we will have some goals to focus on. One was to spend at least 1 hour a week with me, myself, and I. Focus just on yourself. 1 hour a week, which is about 10 minutes a day. Number two, drink at least one bottle of water a day. Just the water intake it into your body is going to get you in a position so that you'll be ready. Number three, run, walk, or crawl a mile a day, just 1 mile a day. And then number four was to save at least $1 a day. Now, if you were with us prior, some people save $10 a day in 100 days. You know what you had, $1,000. If you do $1 a day, you'll have 100. And then the 15 was to contact at least 100 of your family members or closest friends. And then the sixth thing that we added was to share at least one Black History moment with your family members every day. And then read one book. Our first book that we read starting the year out was The Measure of a Man by Sidney Poitier. And then the book that we're focusing on this month is The Miseducation of the Negro by Mr. Carter Godwin Woodson, the father of Black History Month. But I wanted to share a couple people before I bring our special guest, Ms. Thomas, in. But there are a couple times that we look at our History Month. We say, well, it's a short month, and we really talk about the same people. I wanted to share with you about two people. One is Neil deGrasse Tyson. He's an American astrophysicist, a planetary scientist, an author, and science communicator. His professional research includes star formation, exploring the stars and the structure of places like the Milky Way. And this is a brother. And he also has a host of a show called Star Trek. Star, oh man, Star Trek. Sorry about that. But one of the things that he said was it was kind of interesting to have a Black man come on a radio station and talk about something other than race, crime, or slavery, because he was able to go into a radio station. They asked him about a comet that was headed to Earth. And it was very interesting because he said that was one of the first times that radio station that he went to ever had somebody, a Black person, that was not entertaining or talking about race or anything like that. And also Lewis Latimer, who drafted and helped Alexander Graham Bell develop the telephone. He also is credited with the light bulb. That's Lewis Latimer. And those are a couple of key Black history makers, unsung. But tonight we're going to be focusing on building healthy relationships, and we're joined by our local life coach and consultant, Miss Sha'ria Thomas. Miss Thomas, how you doing this evening?
Good evening. I'm doing well. How are you, Drummer?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And it's good to hear your voice and it's good to see you. Uh, Happy belated birthday. I know you're still celebrating.
Well, thank you. Thank you. Happy belated birthday to you as well.
Yes, ma'am. I know tonight we're going to be talking about building healthy relationships and what's healthy and what's not healthy. But before we start to introduce and bring any of that conversation, we want to really introduce you or reintroduce you to the audience. And if you could give them a brief background, history, and your involvement in the area of life improvement and consulting and life coaching that you're currently doing.
Most definitely. Well, I am first off, a licensed professional counselor. That means that I diagnose mental health and emotional disorders from your mood disorders, thought disorders, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, of that nature. And I've been in practice, um, we'll just say over 10 years. And I'm also a certified life coach. And so, in terms of life coaching, is just the gamut of transitions, changes that we may go through in life, and even personal development that one may want to make with their life, on their life goals, from relationships to personal career and goals, is what I help my clients with, as well as health, fitness, and nutrition.
Okay, so that's a total package, and I know you've got some good things to share with our audience. And we're gonna be focusing on relationships. And I know earlier I was talking and just looking at relationships, whether it's dealing with romantic relationships, family relationships, community relationships, business relationships, even our relationship with the country that we currently live in, America.
Mm-hmm.
All those things are relationships, and some of them can be healthy, and some of them could be unhealthy. But in general, when you look at relationships, maybe it's some key things that you can share with the audience that can either help us build healthier relationships.
Most definitely. As you said, there's a multiple. We're always in connection and in relation with others, whether it is on the job, whether it is with our family members, more of a romantic relationship. So there are different types of relationships. And the more that we're connected with our self relationship, the better that we're able to have healthier connections with others. And so, although what I'm going to share, it definitely can coincide with us, how we can bring what we're going to discuss today and really apply it to those multiple types of relationships. I actually wanted to start out by doing a questionnaire, something that our listeners can, and our audience members that may be also watching in, can take away and just start to reflect on where you are, what, even in terms of, this is more on the intimate side that we're looking at, of is this what you apply in your relationship, or maybe something of the direction that helps you to even build those stronger connections. The last time that I actually was on your show, we talked about goals. So even incorporating that when it comes to healthier connections, healthier relationship with your partner. So I like to do that for right now. And because you're always a great recipient of that process,
I got my notepad.
I knew you would. I knew you would. So we're going to start off by just looking at it as, let's be reflective and taking it as, where am I, and if I'm already doing this, or is this something that I'd like to work on or even discuss with your more of a intimate and romantic relationship. We'll discuss first. So this is just a true or false. And for you, drummer, if you feel comfortable in terms of any areas that stand out for you, if you want to us to just reflect on a little bit more, and I might even question you of where you are in those areas too. So true
Okay.
or false, are you good at taking breaks when needed? Are you good at taking breaks when needed? And we're
Uh,
looking at conflict. We're looking at, even in moments, when things are good, they're good. But in those moments where the conflict comes out, that's where the challenges come, and how we deal with those challenges. As we continue discussing this can be applied in terms of conflict resolution in other relationships, but of course we're looking at the romantic, more intimate relationship right now. So that is
well,
number one.
well, I would
Are you
say,
good at taking
well,
breaks?
yeah, no. I
No.
guess I would say false. In my mind, before I got into a relationship, I thought I was good. I thought it was true. But when you
Mm-hmm.
get involved with somebody else, you find out that it's false. So I would have to say, honestly, it's false. Plus, she's
Got
watching,
it.
so I got to tell the truth.
There you go. Okay. So rooms to improve, something to make a discussion on how to move through that. And I will be giving some suggestions, some tips that are evidence-based and help many of my own clients, myself, um, just ongoing, that hopefully we can help others to really start initiating and putting that to work today. Number two, when I apologize, it usually gets accepted by my partner. When I apologize, it usually gets accepted by my partner.
Uh, yeah, yes, I can say that because I'm a pretty
Okay.
good excuse maker.
Excuse maker. Okay. Got it. So you're good. That's a skill. It's a skill to be able to know when to take responsibility, apologize, own up to what you do. So
Right.
that's a skill. That's a good thing. Okay. I can say that I'm wrong. I can say that I'm wrong.
Okay.
So that's the same thing in terms of us apologizing, taking that responsibility for our actions. The next one, I am pretty good at calming myself down.
Oh yes, no doubt. Easy since birth.
Since birth. Okay. That's not always such an easy one. I want to pause at that one, because that one is one that is very common in terms of self regulating. Oftentimes, when one is triggered, we may go to what we call fight or flight in terms of our stress response. And so, of course, we know in terms of, and if we don't, that's okay, I'm going to explain it. Fight or flight, meaning that you may not physically fight, but some may, but you may fight with your words. You go into a stance where you get defensive, or want to take a stance of defending your position. And so some may go to that route, and some may go to flight. And flight is when we avoid, when we don't talk it over, when we don't want to deal with it, or we may project the problem onto our partner. So it's great, Reginald, that that's already something natural for you. But for some, and when the relationship struggle, it's because one may go into fight or flight mode when they are triggered with stress, talking about an issue that bothers them, being concerned about something that happens in the relationship. And so being able to really learn how to get into what we call relaxation response is very important to strengthening how we deal with conflict. in a relationship. And we can even apply that on the job. We can even apply that when it comes to relationships with our family members, sister, brother, mom, and dad. Because if that skill was never learned, it definitely will repeat itself in our romantic relationships, those that we become more closer to. Okay. So another, okay. Another, even when arguing, we can maintain a sense of humor. Even when arguing, we can maintain a sense of humor.
Yeah.
I bet. I bet it stays humorous in your relationship.
And, sometimes that could be a good thing or a bad thing because people might not take you serious in a relationship or even in business or even in any other situation. But, I have to, there is a degree of sincerity, but, I have to, when I pull it out and look at myself, sometimes I can laugh at my mistakes or my boo-boos. So, yeah, you got to have a little sense of humor, at least. Yeah. So I say,
Most
yeah.
definitely. Good deal. Good deal. Okay. When my partner says we should talk to each other in a different way, it usually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Because, I can be one-sided, and sometimes you got to come at it from a different approach. Uh, you know, and especially looking at it from somebody else's viewpoint. So I can say yes. Yeah.
Good. So just being, and that goes into more of a tip of what helps. I published an article called Reactivating the Love Factor because normally when a relationship gets to a state where one feels that they fall out of love, and that sense of being in love is, it's just that, it's a feeling, but the connection goes beyond that when there's the level of commitment. There's elements of intimacy in terms of trust, openness, and honesty. And so that's built beyond just that physical attraction. And so many relationships don't last because without the physical attraction and the actual elements of the relationship aren't strengthened, then that can really deteriorate and cause the relationship to end. So being aware, of, even I would challenge our listeners and our audience members to consider, the state of your relationship of, is it beyond just that physical, of the elements of even what you want to see out of your relationship, and consider that for yourself. Okay, our next one. My attempts to repair our discussions when they get negative are usually effective. My attempts to repair our discussions when they get negative are usually effective.
No. I would say not in the middle. They would be in the middle because
In the
sometimes,
middle.
especially if you approach it from a humorous standpoint, the other party might think you're not serious. You know what I'm saying? And so, I might think it's okay, but it might not be because if I'm, kind of not saying jokingly, but if you look at it with a sense of humor, sometimes people just don't take you serious, you know.
Very true.
So I can say that's in the middle.
Okay. Okay. So just that, what I hear for you, drummer, is the balance of knowing when to actually take more of a serious stance and let the humor go.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Well, we'll definitely talk more about that. We are pretty good listeners, even when we have different positions on things. We are pretty good listeners, even when we have different positions on things.
Well, I can check that one off on a yes. You know, uh, I've always been and I know sometimes it's kind of, self thought thinking, but I think I'm a good
Mm-hmm.
listener, you know, and, sometimes uh, a good listener can be accused of not having an opinion because I'm listening to find out what you're talking about, trying to understand it. So
Mm-hmm.
I will listen.
Okay. Okay. Listening, sometimes we think that there's a there is a type of listening that is active listening. And just like you said, what I hear is that you'll take that other person's perspective and try to hear them out. But when we actively listen, we want to be engaged too. Because if I'm not allowing there to be feedback, then the other person may not receive that information. So asking questions is a good thing, or even reflecting back on what the other person may say, because then it creates the connection with, okay, I am listening to where, because you're not talking, the other person may need more feedback. And that actually is a healthy type of communication, is that there is a receiver and a sender. And so that reciprocation needs to continue throughout, as we, as that level of communication happens. So that's a part that even everyone is not aware of in terms of that level of active listening. Is
Mhm.
we think, well, I'm just quiet, but what am I taking in to really understand what the other person is saying? And
Well,
that's when I need to check in with the other person.
okay. Well, how would, like, just say if someone, like, if I say I'm listening, but I might not want to interrupt you, but
Hmm.
I get, I guess I just did though. I just asked a question in the middle of the discussion, so that's a lot more active. But sometimes, especially from a male perspective, I might say, "Well, I'm gonna listen," and then uh, I might not have a comment
Right.
because I
Hmm.
absorbed it, and that is, but I like the active listening part. I have to adapt that more into the uh, my mindset. I like that.
Good deal. Good deal. All right, let's continue. So if things get heated, we usually pull out of it and change things.
Uh, well, yeah. Before it gets, you know, and believe it or not, I don't think I've got into a heated battle, you know, but usually I try to tone it down before it gets, well, on my side, even in business, I've had, not necessarily in a relationship where it went all the way.
Mhm.
I call it red line when it just go out, we in a
Mm,
shouting match. Uh,
yes.
I typically don't get in that mindset, but I've had people that got into a shout match with me. But and then I could, and then it toned down somewhat because uh, I was, I could have said something, but if I did, it would have been remembered more than what they said.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And you bring up a good point, is if we get to a place that we have to yell at the other person, it's no longer constructive. It's no longer
Mm.
helpful, whether that is our intimate partner, that we are on the job, we're talking to, a family member. So that's again a part of that self-regulating, to determine, hey, where am I? Why am I at a place where I need to yell at this person? Um, that is a big one in
Mm.
terms of us looking at what's healthy and what's unhealthy. And because some of us, even just how we were raised, the
Ooh.
background that we come from. and in the home environment that it may have been just so normal that was just the way that one may communicate with their parents or their siblings, and to take that into a relationship, an intimate romantic relationship, or think that they could even communicate with their coworkers, taking that on the job. So that's the part of unlearning those unhealthy behaviors that are harmful moving forward, in terms of really recognizing what creates a healthy dynamic. And all of those, we kind of gather that big connection of, yeah, we're talking about maybe a more intimate relationship, but it follows us in multiple areas of our lives.
And and you bring up a good point. Growing up in my household, it was pretty quiet. I never really saw my granddaddy and grandmother argue. Or they might have taken it somewhere else. But I've been in households, or even my mother get in an argument that got beyond. They didn't get into shouting and all that type. But I've been in households where it was full out battle. The intensity of the noise. And when I look back on that, it could be some of my classmates, some people that I've been around for a long period of time. You can see it in the next generation because that's what they were more accustomed to doing.
Yes.
I think a quiet environment where all parties got an opportunity to explain themselves and talk, it made conflict resolution a little bit easier.
Most definitely.
So, the family environment, I think, is critical. How we were raised, how we were brought up. Yes, looking at those things.
Most definitely, yes. Thanks for bringing that up, Drummer, because, just as we're saying that everybody doesn't grow up in that, say, more calm environment or talking it over. That was never learned. So where does that, in terms of how that transition of applying that to a relationship, if they never gain that skill? In my article, Reactivating the Love Factor, I talk about practicing patience, because that's the process of the build, is that we may be at different levels in terms of background, culture. And so that willingness of being able to understand your partner, meet them where they are, so that those unhealthy ways that were developed years ago, that may be triggered in moments of conflict, that you're willing to have that level of patience. And that only comes through communicating. That only comes to being able to talk it over. Okay, so the next one, my partner is good at soothing me when I get upset. My partner is good at soothing me when I get upset.
Yes.
Okay, good deal.
I know I said that kind of quick, but but yeah, because yeah.
That's a good thing, most definitely. And we have to be able to know how to self-soothe too, not be so dependent on our partner to help us calm down. And so in the sense of knowing how to self-soothe is one that is often said all the time, especially when it comes to anger management, is walking away. However, when it comes to healthy communication, the walk away method there does need to be a communication piece that happens before we
Okay.
just leave
Yeah. Yeah.
in terms of walking away and we're in the middle of a conversation,
Right.
because there's that level of respect. And so in a healthy relationship with one, because even if you were on the job and your
Mhm.
supervisor upsets you, do you just
Oh,
walk away as
right.
the supervisor is talking to you? Right? So we wouldn't
Right.
do that. But oftentimes in a intimate relationship, some may think that that's okay because, oh, I've got to calm myself down. But
Right.
that's that level of respect on both ends. I respect your needs and you respect my needs.
Mhm.
And so that's where we're moving towards in terms of that healthy connection with one another.
I like that. And in some situations, there are people that have walked away that didn't come back.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
most definitely.
even in a job or even in a personal relationship, um, that can be a barrier. Uh, and Going back to me personally, uh, uh, I've always, tried to look at a situation
Mm-hmm.
before, for instance, I could get, and maybe this is crazy, but I read a lot of comic books growing up. So
Okay.
I was, you know, there's a character called the Hulk, and the Hulk is always angry or something.
Mm-hmm.
But there's something in it that says, uh, if you can imagine or think about what really makes you upset, if you can you can't get everything, but if you can get
Mm-hmm.
the things that kind of tick you off, and you can handle those things, even in a relationship, a personal relationship, a business relationship, or a community relationship, where somebody says something, it won't affect you as much. You know what I'm saying? Uh,
Right.
and I see a question here, Ms. Sha'ria.
Okay.
It says,
Yes.
how do you ask to put the conversation on pause if you feel uncomfortable if it's escalating?
Very good question. How do you ask to put the conversation on pause if you feel uncomfortable or if it's escalating?
Mm-hmm.
So, definitely, that's what we're talking about in that moment before the walkaway happens, and you start to feel one starts to feel that tension building in your body. Maybe you're gritting your teeth, clenching your fists. There's a sense of feeling when we're in the moment, that tension starts to build.
Mm,
That is the time to communicate. I call it the affirmative I.
mm,
When we stay at a place that I'm respectful of the other person and myself, there's no level of blame. I feel uncomfortable. I need a moment. So that's the time to express. And literally, it does not have to be a question, it is a declarative statement, and
mm.
allowing that time to self soothe, calm down, to be able to revisit the conversation in a more calmer level and on a respectful tone.
Ah,
So that's definitely a great question there.
and, and I know, we're talking about relationships and we're looking at personal relationships, but
Mm-hmm.
also it could be in the workplace or
Yes,
it could be in the streets. Especially now, there are many subject matters that tick people off. For
most
instance,
definitely.
especially when it comes down to race, when it comes down to even uh, COVID-19, being vaccinated, not vaccinated, wearing a mask, not wearing a mask, and or even political, where
Mm-hmm.
people have to walk away from a situation because, yeah, maybe you can handle your relationship with you and your lady, but when you get outside and you got to interact with a coworker or somebody in line at the post office or Walmart, and you try to avoid a conflict because you're in a relationship because you guys are in the store, you're at work, and then people for some reason now they like to assert their position,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes it's difficult to, some conversations you can't have with everybody,
Correct.
you know,
Most definitely.
and sometimes it's easier, to tone it down if you kind of know somebody. But if you're in a situation where you don't know somebody and you out in
Mm-hmm.
a store or somewhere, is there any key advice that you could give people? I know that's kind of out there a little bit, but if you're in Walmart or somewhere like
Mm-hmm.
that, and somebody gets upset because you didn't have your mask on, or something like that. I've seen people actually get in a fight in a store or a restaurant because of something as simple as a face mask.
Right, exactly. There is good question, drummer. There is uh, personal rights. There's a number of type of rights, constitutional right, human rights we have, but personal rights is more of our emotional rights. And so in terms of our emotional rights, is first determining I have a right to assert that right. Yes, I have a right to say what I think, what I feel. However, in that moment of I have to determine if it's worth me asserting that right.
Mm.
And what you're saying here in that moment is, and everyone doesn't have that skill, but it really is taking a moment to determine. I would say, just ask yourself, is it worth it?
Mm.
Is it worth it? Everything that we think in our mind, a thought, does not have to be communicated.
Wow.
What's the risk and benefits? What's the cost and the benefits of what I'm saying? And so if we start to use that discretion more instead of it being a sense of just asserting that right all the time, it's not necessary for every situation for us to assert our level of expression. Sometimes it's actually better to be more passive in
Mm.
moments. And so I would just encourage one to start to reflect on being, um, just having that sense of developing more discernment and starting with, yeah, I have this right, but in this moment, is it necessary for me to assert that right? And
Mm.
just finding that questioning of oneself before speaking on it. Definitely for those who are easily prone and reactive to be impulsive with their words.
Mm.
That definitely would be one.
How they say, keeping it real. There's a lot of people
Keeping
that
it
say,
real,
I'm
yeah.
keeping it real.
That's what they
Because
say.
people say, hey, I'm gonna keep it real. And it made me think, not that, sometimes as a black and brown person here in America, we got a relationship with America. And
Yes.
America, uh, that relationship, sometimes we can't say everything that somebody else says about somebody. We see in relationships with different people, uh, especially entertainers, athletes, because everybody says, well, I got freedom of speech. I can say what I want to say. I got a view. And if you say something and you're not prepared for the consequences, especially if you got a job, if you got a
There we
job
go.
and it will, or, you just can't say anything to anybody and hope that you're not going to be held accountable.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
so what's happening now, growing up in a family, I knew if I said certain things that I was going to be held accountable within my family. So when I got a job, not that I was afraid of losing my job, but I knew there were certain things that I couldn't say on the job if I wanted to keep that job. And I think that
Right.
was another.
Most definitely. Okay.
Oh, and this is another question, and this could help people on the job too. Do you recommend
Yes.
uh, engaging a therapist or mediator to help with relationship conflicts, because sometimes we don't think we need nobody else, outside person. But
Very good. So the question is, when do you recommend engaging a therapist or a mediator to help with relationship conflicts?
yes,
That is the part in terms of us looking at the health of a relationship. And so that's why we're going over these questions to determine that. So when we look at what's damaging behaviors in a relationship, just as what we're talking about is the sense of when one becomes defensive, um, and not taking responsibility for one's own mistakes, making excuses for what they do, placing blame on your partner, when there is levels of what might be considered verbal abuse, the yelling, the screaming, the cursing at one another. That would be a time to where if the one or both of the partners are not able to work together on how to reach some type of resolution, then definitely intervening with a professional, in terms of a therapist, would definitely be that time to seek help. This is something that even in my practice that I work with couples too. And so, and not just married couples, it could be couples who, even some that I've worked with have only been together maybe about a year, because it's really that they see, okay, I love this person, I care about them, but there are some behaviors I see that if we are to make it, we've got to change the way the dynamic of the relationship is. So that would definitely what I would encourage in terms of knowing, um, and really just understanding yourself. When you see for yourself, okay, I love this person, or I care about this person. However, there are some things that I feel disrespected on, or that I'm not able to communicate, or that I know I don't know how to communicate well. That would be a time to reach out for some professional help.
that's good. That's good. Because a lot of times, you know, especially, and I have to look at, by this being Black History Month,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times, for some reason, people don't think Black and brown people need help, counseling. Uh, we just had a rash of suicide in the entertainment area.
Right.
Uh, and you look at people and you say, well, look like everything's going good. Life is great. Uh, you know, but a lot of times we need help. And I guess those questions that you're laying out for us helps us. And anytime you're in a relationship, you'll find out if you need some help. Because anytime
There
you got
you
to
go.
interact with another person, just like
Yeah.
if I'm by myself, I don't think nothing wrong with me.
Right.
I'm like, man, I'm good. I ain't got no problem. I get along with everybody. But when I got to interact with some other people, it's to be a problem because of things that I didn't have to deal with because I was just dealing with me.
There
And
we
if I never address uh, personal questions to myself, what do I like? What do I don't like? What makes me angry? What makes me upset? You know, I don't know until I interact with somebody else, and I'm like, man, I know I don't like that.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
drummer. Our relationships can be our best teachers.
Mm.
And if we are more receptive to see it as that, whether it is with your romantic partner, whether it is that coworker on the job that annoys you, or the supervisor who just won't let up, it's an opportunity to change. And just as you said, when we're with ourselves, hey, everything is great. But when we see the other person's perspective, it's like, I didn't see myself in that way. But if we take it as a positive and not so reactive to, in terms of accepting that criticism in a positive, constructive way, then we're more receptive for things to grow on that level to where we're helping our own personal development there.
Mm.
Most definitely.
And I think we had another question. It was asking some of the articles that you have on relationships. Where can they find those? Or do you have any articles out there, any publications or anything out? I guess on your website or something like that for people?
Sure. You can find my articles on marriage.com. I That's a good question. I probably do need to actually place it on my website so it makes it accessible. But yes, it is on marriage.com.
Okay. And I thought about something else. And I know we in Black History Month because sometimes when we look at relationships, uh, sometimes it's racial. And when you ask people that grew up in a particular population group, they might not see themselves as being racist towards another group of people or biased because they say, man, I got plenty of black friends, got plenty of white friends, I got plenty of gay lesbian friends, but they might assume that they don't have any bias because they got one or two people, or they just don't see them, or nobody's called them out. Case in point, there are many people that around, even in domestic abuse relationships, there are people that are good around certain people, but then they totally bad around other people. It's like what's that, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type mindset. But again, we all need some type of help at some point. And especially here in America, the relationship between us as a people and America, it can get kind of cloudy and unclear. It is, and I guess I bring it closer. In the relationship, I know one time you said you have to establish boundaries or things like that within relationships.
Yes, boundaries, most definitely. Boundaries is being understanding of protecting your physical space, your emotional space, even your financial space. There are different types of boundaries that we have, but truly overall, it's the level of recognizing where's oneself as it relates to what I will and won't allow in connection with another person. And so that can be applied to any relationship, whether it is on the job, with a family member, with an intimate partner. And oftentimes that's not learned, unfortunately. When we when we look at just how we aren't groomed, whether female or male, to have healthy relationships unless it was modeled in our household. We never develop that until we're faced with, say, a unhealthy one where there might be low levels to high levels to where it's actually physical or sexual abuse, insults of that nature. That's never, or even seeking therapy, that's never gained until we are actually faced with it. So that's why it is good for us to have these conversations so that outside of the therapeutic realm, that say the typical lay person can start to really reflect on, hey, you know what? This is what is going to help me to connect better with others and be willing to look at oneself.
Oh, yes. And I see a question down there. In today's society, especially, uh, how do we, suggest or teach our children that conflict can be normal and prepare them for failures or setbacks? Because a lot of people just not in today's society, they're not prepared for a setback or failure. We got
Mm-hmm.
thin-skinned people. You say something to them, they get all disembobulated, or if they don't get the prize, they can't win the trophy. If they can't be
Yes.
at the top, but how do you prepare these, our young people for these future conflicts? They're on the internet, they push the little button and they don't communicate. Before you know it, they push either a like or a don't like, and now we got a bigger conflict because nobody's communicating.
Most definitely. So how do we prepare our children for future failures or setbacks? Just as we're doing now, it has to start with a conversation. And you know, I'm very open in terms of I have sons,
Mm,
and I'm very open with talking to them about anything, sex, what bothers them emotionally in terms of failure, of knowing that it's okay. We change the framework of what a failure is and recognizing that we are not able to learn unless we make mistakes. And so if we change that, the perspective and communicate that to our children, then they can be learn the skill, because there is a skill in learning how to deal with disappointment.
mm,
I see it, very often of it affects so many now as teenagers. That plays out a lot. If they've never learned how to deal with disappointment, it really affects their self-esteem. That plays into their mental health and them suffering from depression and anxiety. So if we could just start with the level of how we communicate, and that even goes into another project that I'm working on, called STEM University International, where
mm,
we're taking a perspective of the whole picture, the whole child, the whole person, to really build out how to put that perspective of teaching our children life skills.
mm,
If we stick to the basics of helping them to learn how to deal with interpersonal relationships, that means what we're doing now, one-on-one relationships with others, as well as intra, meaning my own personal relationship of what's going on within my own thoughts, what's going on within my own emotions, and starting that as young as 4 and 5.
mm.
Then we really start to reframe how children, then teens, and even adults are able to deal with situations in a more constructive and healthier way.
Mm.
So that's definitely the aim we want to move towards.
I like that. That's good. That's good. Because especially now, if we don't prepare the next generation uh, to deal with conflict, uh, you know, it it could be a nightmare. Because people now, it don't
Yes,
take that much to set them off. I mean,
exactly.
it just like everybody's got a trigger finger or a hot button, and we have a tendency uh, to just react rather than come to some you know civilized means of dealing with each other.
Most definitely. And the starter of it all, we go back to, you even say it in terms of some of the goals is slowing things down,
Mm,
breathing in terms of, although many may not, or some, I'm not going to say many, but some are not open to a receptive because they don't know that it relates in terms of meditation and it being helpful, but just
mm,
learning how to slow things down before we respond. And that's why, meditation can be so beneficial, because it helps us to get our mindset in to where we're able to be less reactive,
Mm,
less in that state of out of impulse or ego that I just will do or say things, more able to think things through. And so that definitely is important for us to really just start teaching that at the ground level with our children. A big thing that I would propose is that we start to put that within our schools,
mm,
because that they spend so many hours. Even as a parent, they're not as much with us if you are a parent. So placing those types of programs within the schools definitely would be beneficial.
okay. And we had another question. Does
Hmm.
our physical being affect our mental health?
Does
Uh,
our physical being does our physical being affect our mental health?
right.
Well, our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, it's all holistic in terms of a big connection. Um,
Mm,
and so, yes, it is related. When I see that statement, what comes to mind is for me is what we call in my field is psychosomatic, meaning that psycho meaning our mind, psych um, and somatic meaning physical symptoms in the body, that in terms of what might be manifesting within our thought process, that can play out physically in our body state. That even saying that, let's look at anxiety.
mm,
That if I'm anxious and I'm having anxiety provoking thoughts, I start to feel discomfort in my body that can lead to my heart racing, my muscles tensing up. And so that can manifest a panic attack. So that's kind of a connection in terms of the physical, starting with the mental, but manifesting and translating into how it affects the physical self. If there's more to that, that's how I'm taking the question, in terms of making that connection with the physical self as well as the mental self.
okay, that's good. Uh, any when you okay, and thank you guys for the questions out there. Oh yeah, can exercise help improve our mental well-being? I know you have a fitness part, element, a piece that you add to helping people, but does exercise really help us calm down and take some of this anxiety and stress off of us when it comes down to, especially in relationships?
Oh yes, and us connecting that to relationships in terms of exercise, the physical health of ourselves, as well as the mental health of ourselves. There's a pleasure principle part of our brain, and so exercise literally it activates what we call those happy um, hormones. They're endorphins, and so when we exercise, that's activated. And so that's the benefit in terms of it helps. There are studies done that it does reduce depression, anxiety for those who actually regularly exercise. So
Mm,
this has been documented. And that's why I incorporate, yes, I'm a therapist, I'm a life coach, but I also am certified when it comes to fitness and nutrition, because it's our whole self. It's not compartmentalizing our physical health and our mental health. They definitely play hand in hand.
thank you, thank you. Oh, and
You're welcome.
definitely thank you once again, Ms. Thomas. Any closing information like contact or any special events or seminars you got coming up?
Sure thing. I see my website is across the screen, Sha'ria Thomas. You can reach me there. And I am on social media platforms at I am Sha'ria Thomas. In terms of any seminars or events coming up, when it comes to relationships, and just, connecting with others, I actually have a Thursday event located in Austell, Georgia, at Chicago Cafe and Lounge, and it's a mix and mingle, for professionals, for singles, for anyone who just wants to come out and enjoy themselves as well as promote their business. Um, that is the time to do it from 8 to 11. That information, can be found at yourultimateyou.com.
Well, thank you, thank you, thank you. And we thank our audience out there. Please like, share, join, and subscribe over here at Square Mile Media Atlanta. We look forward to seeing you guys. We'll take a break next week because of the Super Bowl. But we got a lot of topics lined up. And thank you again, Ms. Thomas. We got a lot of things because we have to stay ready at all times. And the only way to stay ready is to prepare ourselves in times of peace when you don't have to be ready, but you're going to have to always be ready. So this is Reginal Drummer, the Peopleologist, coming to you live. And we love you like God loves the world. You know, the secret of walking on water is knowing where the rocks are. So have a great day and stay ready.